SEO is going through the most disruption right now with AI. As an SEO, you really need to be able to speak in business language. We don't need to make drastic changes when we're making optimizations. Small incremental changes can drive a lot of value.
Welcome to another episode of E-Coffee with Experts. My name is Austin Willman. I'm here with our friend Kay, or he also goes by KD. He's a huge soccer fan, and he's had years of SEO experience, both in-house at big brands and marketing agencies, also big brands. I'm happy to have him here with us. Kay, how you doing today, bro?
I'm doing great, Austin. Thanks for having me again. Really excited to have this conversation with you today.
Same here. And we're going to start on something that everybody is absolutely talking about. Someone walks up to you and they say, "Kay, SEO is dead." How do you respond?
Oh, man, the talk of this is such a controversial topic right now. Simple answer, SEO is not dead. All it has, or all that has happened over the past couple of years or year or two, is that it's more or less changed. SEO is going through the most disruption right now with AI plugging in and all that kind of stuff. But, SEO is not dead. The fundamentals are still in place. And if you're doing good SEO, you should be able to perform well with AIOs, GEOs, LLMs, you name it. So SEO is just morphed into something else. But if I were to answer anyone or give anyone a quick spiel, it's still pretty much the same in terms of fundamentals.
It's still pretty much the same in terms of fundamentals. And you have a very technical background. What do you think is the most important part, especially with, like you said, AI overviews, generative search optimization, and all of that with LLMs? Like, what are the core fundamentals technically about SEO that you still think drive the results?
Yeah, I know. When you think about technical SEO, you need to, factor in those fundamentals that we thought about prior to the introduction of AI and now in the current state that we're in right now. So you need to make sure that you have that technical foundation in place. So what do we mean by that? So that could be your schema. You need to make sure that you have adequate and proper schema in place so that LLMs can properly pass through the site to understand what your pages are about. So that's one factor to consider when you're looking in from a technical standpoint. You also need to factor in, can LLMs access and go through all my information outside of schema? So you're looking at, LLM.txt files and, ensuring that they aren't being blocked by robots.txts. So John Mueller and a ton of people at Google recently came out saying, hey, if you're doing good SEO, you don't really need to worry about appearing within AIOs or anything like that. Core fundamentals within SEO will help you rank or appear within or gain visibility within AIOs. And that's just to say that's one lens to look at it from, whereby Google is, letting people know that, hey, SEO is not dead as long as you continue those core fundamentals. In this lens, we're looking at it from a technical standpoint, but we also need to factor in other LLMs, that is your GPTs, Perplexity, you name it, to leverage those LLM.txt files. So I think from a business's perspective or from anyone within the industry or space, they need to understand that we need to be accommodating or factoring in everything that's needed in order for you to gain that visibility within those LLMs. So make it a good best practice to maintain those fundamental SEO, strategies, if I should say, for lack of better terms. But at the same time, we also need to think current and think long term in terms of like where the space or landscape is going. So we need to also consider like those LLM.txt files and ensuring that those are also included so that the GPTs, your perplexities are able to pass through your site.
Yeah. And you said a lot there. There's a lot to go into. I'm curious, let's back it up a little bit. So you've worked with big brands like Grubhub and big agencies like Single Grain. When it comes to the technical aspect of SEO, is there a difference between in-house versus agency? Or do you do the brands leave that up to you? Did the leaders leave that up to you? Or I guess what I'm asking is there a difference in how to approach SEO fundamentals?
Yeah, in a nutshell, yes. So when you're working within an agency space, typically you're wearing many hats. And what that means is you are acting as a project manager, the SEO, the dev person in some instances, because often too many times there's the bandwidth constraint in terms of like they typically don't have the resources that in-house you may have. So in-house, you have your dedicated dev team, the engineering team, for example, and typically you will rely on them when it comes to a lot of the technical aspects. So from an SEO landscape, what you are doing in terms of your role is you identifying high impact opportunities that can help drive business value or ROI within the in-house scope, connecting with the dev or the engineering teams to implement those. Within the agency space, however, you are doing all of that, but you might have to take it a step further. You might have to understand the intricacies that come behind specific recommendations that you're putting forward. So let's say you're working on core web vitals, page performance. You've identified a potential bottleneck. Let's say some third-party code is affecting how your site is performing. So you need to be able to demystify that content, speak to it in layman's terms, connect with all the relevant or necessary stakeholders, and take it a step further versus within the in-house space. That typically is not the case. You have your own dedicated team that is focused on providing or helping you solve or rectify any issues that may be a bottleneck within SEO, if I should say, for lack of better terms. So not to dumb it down, it simplifies a lot of things when you think about it from an in-house space. Whereas within the agency space, solely thinking about technical SEO, it allows you to really grow and hone in on your skill set because you get exposed to certain things that you may not have when you're working within that in-house space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and thank you for breaking that down because I am a self-proclaimed layman when it comes to SEO. I'm far behind most of the guests that I bring on the podcast, including you. So thank you for
Yeah.
appealing to me. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, Austin, like a buddy of mine recently asked me to review like a 6-page brief that he wanted to send over to a client. And that was a very, very technical heavy brief. He was working towards, trying to mathematically, explain how they can go about the process of appearing within AI overviews and leveraging AI. But my main piece of feedback to him was, hey, man, you really, really need to, dumb this down a little bit more because an executive will look at this and be like, this is way too complex. So and that's another piece that I should just add on here. As an SEO, you really need to be able to speak in business language. What that means is, simplifying complex concepts for your executives, your C-suites to more easily understand, and so that they can also go and get that buy-in for you if needed, that is.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what that project management piece that you're talking about. You're connecting the dot with the business values and the business initiatives with like actually what's possible and what are the best strategies that are happening right now instead of well, I started this agency 25 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever, and this is what worked back then, but since then I've hired a team. So yeah, thanks for breaking that all down. Speaking of AI tools, you and I have chatted before, and you were mentioning, tools like Replit being able to help you build and help you optimize and help you be more efficient in not only just building SEO on and off page, but actually delivering it to clients. Will you walk me through a little bit like what you're doing with Replit or other AI tools like that?
Yeah, great question. And Replit as an example, one of my clients right now, this is a B2C e-commerce client, and we've been getting hammered, if I should say, when it comes from performance metrics, those key KPIs, as far as, traffic is not doing as well. So we're trying to think of out of the box strategies to try and help drive that traffic and drive more links to their site. So a little bit of context or background context there, but the sole initiative here was to try find an easy, efficient way, easy air quotes, if I should say, but an efficient way in order for us to be able to, build out a product for them or build out a calculator for them that will help drive more visits to their site. And that's where I landed on Replit. And basically what I'm using Replit for now is this client is working on, or basically what they sell is baby products. Think mattresses, bassinets, you name it. And they also cater towards women, as far as like pregnant women and women that are expecting to have kids, right? So that being said, we were like, okay, we're going to go in and do the research to understand what opportunities they are within the space and how we can get that competitive advantage. And where we landed was a due date calculator. And that's where Replit comes in. So in the past, what you'd need was a dedicated dev team to build this out. It would take weeks upon weeks to get that from pre-prod to launch. Something that would take so long now has been, condensed to about 30 minutes. To be exact, it took me about 45 minutes to actually get that up and going. So that's where I've been leveraging tools as far as like AI tools, and Replit is a real game changer in my opinion, because all you're leveraging here is more or less prompting and screenshots and sending or sharing any links to specific PDPs that you want included within that due date calculator in this case. And like I said, this was a quick process. Setup time took me about 10 to 15 minutes. And the remainder of that was, just prompting to fine tune and refine how that calculator looked from an aesthetic point of view. So yeah, any additional questions, and happy to dive in a little bit more if you have follow-ups to that.
Yeah. So a couple directions that I want to take that. So for those of you who don't know, Replit is basically an app builder. It's a no-code app builder. So not just like drag and drop like a Wix site, but actually a step further where you can just prompt it like an LLM, like ChatGPT, and it will come up with an app like a due date calculator. The first time when you said a due date calculator, my first thought was homework. My second thought was like project deadlines. And it never even crossed my mind that you were actually talking about pregnancy due dates. So
Right.
we were joking beforehand. I was like, oh, I could use a due date calculator. And you're like, no, that's
Right.
hilarious.
Yeah, I should have, given you a little bit more context there, but all good.
I told you layman right here. I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day from his name is Danny Robles. He's an AI guy here in Phoenix, does workshops, has a big company. And he was talking about the 80-20 principle. And I'm going to loop this back around to Replit in your projects. But he was talking about the Pareto principle, right? Where now the 20% of the work that drives 80% of the results for us, we can have AI that is taking care of 80% of that 20%. So now we're looking at really only 4% of the work that humans we need to do will drive majority of the results. But he said what that does is it frees us up to explore the other 80% of the work that maybe we weren't good at or didn't want to do or hired out for, which the Pareto principle then goes into the hiring as well, which is like if I can hire somebody who is 80% as efficient as I am, that's a win. And I can hire that person and feel good about that. But what Danny was saying is now we get the time and the capacity to explore the other 80% where we're not hyper focused. Actually, what AI is doing is it's creating a goldmine of opportunity in the nuance. It's allowing us to go back through. I'm wondering if you're limited in capacity with your time and your resources, as everyone is, if you could spend more time or you could just dive fully into something with using AI, what would you want to explore?
That is a great question. Something I would want to explore, currently working on right now. And, like I mentioned, wear many hats within the agency space. And one of those hats is content production, right? So with content production, there are a few factors or a few facets that you need to go through. Keyword research so that you identify your primary, your halo keywords. And more recently with AI, there's now the whole concept of query fan out and, understanding or identifying those additional secondary keywords, if I should say, for a lack of better terms. But there's that step. There's the next step of more or less getting a content outline, getting a brief in place as far as article angle, including those keywords, topic direction, and so forth and so on, as well as, mapping out how the content will shape up on that given site. So that is your heading hierarchy, H1s, H2s, you name it. And of course, there's the publishing of that content piece. One thing that I've really been leaning really, really into is trying to automate that entire process. So, automate that entire process with human review, because there's a ton of content out there, AI gen content that is garbage, for a lack of better terms, right? It's not great content. It's not written with the human in mind or the user in mind. It's written for LLMs. So what I'm trying to do in my own time, and there are a ton of tools like this, but one thing that I have found is it's always going to be on a case by case basis when it comes to creating content. You're going to get a brand toolkit for a client, and they're going to have specifics in terms of guidelines, do's and don'ts. So what I'm trying to tailor is, factoring in all those variables, for a lack of better terms, in terms of like what I deem as good content, like character lengths, for instance, how much long the content piece should be, what other resources or value add-ons should be within the content, HTML tables, think infographics. I'm trying to streamline that whole entire process from start to finish, but with human interjection, where I'm going through and QAing and making sure that information is accurate. So human review is needed. So I'm leveraging some tools to do that. I think AirOps, for example, N8N can also help with that. So in my dream scenario, it's getting a tool like that in place and making sure that it doesn't hallucinate, because that's one challenge that I'm currently going through right now. It doesn't hallucinate. And by doing so, I'll be able to free up, let's say, about 10 to 15 hours out of my week by just automating that entire process while also maintaining and keeping that content quality up. So that's definitely one thing that I've had top of mind, currently working on. I do not have a TBD in terms of when that will be done, though.
Man, N8N, I hear so much about it, and I played around. I probably spent not quite a whole working week, but it gosh darn felt like it, that I was just in front of N8N trying to, plug things in and play around with it. So powerful. And I can see how many use cases it has, especially in SEO and creating content. When we're talking about that content piece, working at an agency and having many different clients, there's so much to focus on when it comes to SEO, but content is a very big important piece of that. And not just blogs, but also, video and other media. Are you seeing other forms of media? I mean, short form, long form, and how do those other forms of media contribute to SEO?
Yeah, no, great question, great point. Quote that I have from, my previous time at Single Grain. Eric actually used to share this within our internal meetings all the time. And that was a term that he coined, that is search everywhere optimization. And with that, we really, really need to understand the fact that this ecosystem has been drastically changing. I think about a few weeks ago, Google announced that, hey, they will be now indexing videos from Instagram, pardon me, Facebook, that is. They announced that they'll be now indexing videos from Instagram, right? So what does that mean for page one? Basically, it means that there's more competition. So you need to ensure that you're diversifying the kind of content that you're using. So the way I see it, I think that it's important not to just have traditional text content or words, if I should say, for lack of better terms, but you need to look at it across the entire landscape. There's a definite need for video content. There's a stat that I read a long time ago, which said like, hey, our attention span is way less than a jellyfish at this point. So a goldfish at this point, right? So that being said, we really need to find ways where we're creating short bit-sized pieces of content that's easily digestible, because we just don't have that attention span as we used to in a few years ago. So that means a combination of content, traditional content, that is infographics, video content. And with that traditional copy content, one thing I want to really touch on is there's a ton of opportunity there whereby you can repurpose that content. And that's really one thing that I've been, championing over the past year and a half, is repurposing content, because there's a ton of information there that you could definitely leverage across all your other platforms, i.e. social platforms, of course, that could help drive additional traffic and additional traffic through your platforms, as well as to your site. So that's how I'm thinking about it. Is a search everywhere optimization strategy, and not just honing in on Google, as whereas just looking across the entire board and seeing where there's opportunity and The last thing I'll add is you need to understand your customer profile. So you need to
Mm,
understand where are they looking
mhm.
for, or where are they asking their questions, whether it's Meta on Facebook or Instagram. You need to understand where they are so that you can serve them the content there, but also understand that the way we're serving content has to be in different forms and shapes, as far as, short form, long form content, as well as video content.
And you're talking about repurposing, as in, I'm going to take this podcast, let's say like this, because this is a part of our process, right? We take the podcast and then we'll snip it up into short form videos. That's, that strategy has been around for a long time. But you're talking about, in addition, taking the transcript and then building that out and putting, maybe it's an N8N process, putting some sort of process behind it where it's also generating statistics, or it's finding other sources that we talked about here, like, Replit, the CEO of Replit had this so and such, and then putting that in and then making an additional blog post about that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly the point that I'm going at right now. And one quick example I can give you, a client,
Yeah.
B2B client, they had an old article focused on global chip shortages around the
Mm,
COVID time, and that article was not doing well. So in addition to optimizing that piece of content, we created an infographic for that piece of content that they could then also repurpose across their socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, and that as well helped drive incremental traffic to their site. So a
mm.
simple strategy like that, and something that's still based within the core SEO fundamentals, as far as I know it, over the past couple of years, still does drive results. So not being laser focused on AI solely, but also leaning into other traditional or fundamental ways, as far as like how can you drive traffic or gain eyeballs to your site or your content.
So we're talking a lot about, what's new in 2025, and we're talking about how we can press the gas pedal more. How can we accelerate more? I'm wondering right now, is there anything you're seeing in SEO that may have worked a while ago that people are still doing, but it's not really doing anything, or even more so, it's actually slowing them down?
That's a great question. One thing that I think, and this is very, very controversial because, people have different opinions and people see different results. I've definitely seen positive results as far as that goes, but there's link building, which is done the wrong way, whereby, you're buying links, giving them like anchor text to get that placement for. However, the quality of those links aren't really and truly valuable as far as, driving that referral traffic to your site. And whatever traffic that is driven to the site is not quality traffic. So why I call that out is, as SEO professionals, as marketers, if I should say, we really need to take a step back and understand the business objective of our clients or the business that we're working for, and always work towards providing value. However, some tactics that I've seen in the past is, you're working with a company and they're getting you links, but those links aren't great quality. Those links are coming from spammy sites or sites that don't have any content, not optimized from a technical point of view, layout shifts, you name it. So I think it works until it doesn't work, but there's a strategic way to go about it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you bring this up. We were on a call just earlier today. The CEO of DWS and I, an agency out of Florida. Actually, you might know her. I'll talk to you after about this person. But yeah, we were talking exactly about that. We're talking about link building and what we see in the industry as what is actually harmful. And the truth is that DR can be manipulated very easily, and site traffic can also be manipulated. But to your point, we want to serve the client and serve the brand. We have a business intention, and whoever your partner is, have to understand that even if you have a lower DR or lower traffic, if the competitors have similar links being placed, but all their sites are also in other countries, right? If you look at the US traffic, and
Yeah,
other people are ranking for free movie downloads, right? Like that's not what we want. So
right.
you're right,
Exactly.
there's a strategic way to do it. My question then to you, to just to follow up on that one, earned media with publishers and contacting quality journalists to send out articles and to write that much content that's quality, that actually has data backing it up. That seems like it's kind of a big task, especially if you don't have a huge team. There's not a ton of resources. If that is still a significant strategy when it's done the right way, assuming that we can get a lot of traction, like, how do you do that?
That's a great question. And, there are workflows that you can leverage around this. And pardon me here, because that's one space I haven't really focused on extensively, but they are resources. There's one that comes top of mind, and it's more or less an automation workflow process. This guy from Israel built this AI. I believe it's Swan AI, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, what that does, outside of that quality content being written, it automates that workflow for you. That is, it helps you identify those publishers. It helps you craft a personalized text or message for those, reach out to those, as well as manage them. And that's all done within Slack, which I think is super awesome because I spend half my time on Slack. So there are ways and there are tools that you can leverage to more or less automate that process. But when it comes to quality content, one thing that I mentioned, and that's also including that research piece that you mentioned, right? Leveraging AI for that is not a bad thing, but you need to make sure that it's human reviewed for accuracy. And that's even more fundamental when you're falling in those your money, your life kind of spaces, so you need to ensure that there's that editorial review, and you also have, someone who's an expert who can validate whatever your claims may be within a content piece. So I think leveraging AI is definitely the right course of action. Think deep research to do the research and identify stats for you. Crafting that AI, these models are amazing. I know I rely on Claude a lot when it comes to writing my actual content because it sounds more humanized versus GPT. So leveraging those tools for that. But one fundamental piece that people forget is the quality of the content. So review is really, really fundamental. So I think you can leverage those tools, workflows to automate that process. But the content always needs to be high quality content because at the end of the day, humans are going to read it, or they're going to leverage LLMs to extract that content, which is going to, summarize it for them, for lack of better terms. So, yeah.
High quality content, I think, is a takeaway for me there.
Absolutely.
So, as we're nearing the end of our time here, I kind of have two different directions that I want to go. One's going to be very short, so I'll save it for the end. But I'm curious what kind of, if you're, well, obviously you're doing testing, but like what kind of testing are you doing right now? Or what kind of results that were shocking or surprising have you seen, at New Standard?
Yeah, great question. And I wouldn't more so call this a test because I feel like it had been validated in the past, but constant shifts and changes often lead me to want to retest just to make sure and get that validation. But one quick call out for you that we've been doing a lot with our clients is, let's say we're doing traffic decline analysis. We find that some of our pages, some of our clients' pages are on the downward trend. One thing that we want to do is identify those quick, easy wins, low-hanging fruits, if I should say, for lack of better terms. And by identifying those, we're trying to see what we can add to the pieces of content to try and, regain some of those lost rankings. So one thing that we've been doing is leaning into content pieces that don't have it, that is FAQs, specifically with AI overviews, and how those are very prevalent for informational type of content. So leaning into FAQs and adding those to pages, and that has resulted in a major lift in some traffic for some pages. The other piece, which I know has been a discussion point in the past, was key takeaways. LLMs love key takeaways. Just having that snapshot of what the article is about is really, really important for them because it gives them a quick summary. So key takeaways are really important if you want to appear within AI overviews, but take that with a grain of salt. And further testing may be needed in the future because there's constant changes over and over again, but that's one success that we've seen in the recent past couple of months, if I should say. Just adding key takeaways has resulted in like almost immediate lift in terms of traffic.
And you're talking like at the top of the page,
Yeah,
what?
oh, it's up. Yeah, at the top of the page, adding key takeaways. Even those trust signals. Like thinking of EEAT, medically reviewed by, adding a little section over there. That really helps build that trust, and that's what at least search engines like Google are looking for in terms of okay, this article has been verified in terms of like it's medically reviewed, it's within your money, your life sector, and we've got someone who can validate these claims. So I think those small changes are really, really important, especially when you've been doing this for so long. We often forget that, hey, we don't need to make drastic changes when we're making optimizations, for example. Small incremental changes can drive a lot of value. And I can keep going on and on. So I'm going to stop it right there and open it up to any additional questions you have.
I love that. I love that. Well, first of all, if people want to learn more about you, where do you prefer that they reach out?
Yeah, great question. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm spending all my time there, so I'm sure you're gonna plug this in. But LinkedIn, Khanyile Dlamini, is where you can find me.
Dlamini. Did I get it?
Almost there. Almost there.
Not even close,
Listen,
dude.
it is not easy. So I completely get that.
Okay, awesome. So LinkedIn, and I'm there as well. And LinkedIn is a whole nother thing that we could go down. It's a rabbit hole right now. Speaking of Eric and Single Grain, they've just released Carrot, or maybe it's still on the wait list. I'm not sure. You know, the ABM B2B ad creator, which is really cool. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. We can have another conversation on that. Last thing that I want to leave you with is a simple question, and I'm stealing it from Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans book. If you could put your perspective or share something on a billboard about SEO that the world would see, what would you put on the billboard?
Full circle. SEO is not dead.
All right. I love that.
SEO is not dead.
SEO's not dead.
I mean, it's the most controversial topic at the time, right? And
I know.
SEO is not dead. Yeah, that's honestly the main thing that I would touch on right now.
Mhm.
On another note, one thing or one other thing that I'll put out there is, you really need to love what you do and you really need to be adaptable. So what I enjoy about SEO the most is, it's constantly changing. I'm always on my feet. And so if you're looking for a challenge and something new or a different problem every day or a different challenge, I think SEO is definitely the space for you.
Yeah, it's definitely not an industry you can stand still and just kind of be content.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
Always something new every day.
Yeah. That's what makes it so fun. And this conversation was a lot of fun, Kay. So thank you for joining me. And we will see you next time on eCoffee with Experts.
Thank you, Austin. I appreciate it.